We're live.
And we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Almost there. Almost.
Hold.
Whoops. Hold.
There's House Sparks live.
Yep.
That's me.
Just going to get us up on Substack, too, while we're waiting for our Chicago queue in. Hi, chat room. Say hello, everybody. I don't know. Let's see if the chat works on that. Does that pop up? No. Damn it. Why doesn't it show? The chat should be there, but it's not working. Let me restart it or something. Refresh it. Maybe that works.
There's a big gap in between us.
Okay. That happens. I'm sorry about that. I blame myself. Hold on. I'll do this. Hey, there's the chat room.
Hey.
Yeah.
Who needs me?
Just copy that one and then go back to you and me. And then, why don't it paste it in there? Oh. Nope. Dagnabbit. Trying to get the chat to appear in this thing, but it's being weird. Boo.
Boo.
Yeah, I don't want the Streamlabs one. I want the cameras in the way. Chat restream. There we go. Okay. Almost there. Aha. It started to show up. Look at that. Look at that business.
Hey.
It's very dense. I have to fix that. I'll have to change the status of it, but at least we can see everybody. We know they're there. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Good to see you. Hello. Thanks. The Flapper set last night was a lot of fun. It was a good time. Do we hear Chicago? Are we all right? I want to make sure I'm not... Wait.
Yeah, I'm not.
I didn't hear him.
Devin, are we good?
Turned on.
Wait, now I hear him.
Yeah, we can no longer hear you, Devin.
We're live. We've been live.
Excellent. Look at that. We're live. Yeah, I hear you now. It's great. Hi, Chicago. Welcome. That was very exciting. I was like, why did the audio just go away? But now it's back, and that's fantastic, and it's great to be back on the air. It's as always. And Johnny Million is joining me in the chat room, is visible on the screen, and we're up and running. And it's just the opening that you'd want to have. It's kind of like, imagine, if you will, and this might be difficult, Johnny, if you and I were going up an escalator, and we were halfway up the bottom.
We even get a face plant.
And you don't get one. The dream, cannot happen. I gotta say, it was quite the joy, having that as kind of a release on the pressure valve this week. Now I do have. I mean, obviously there are details we will have to work out in Escalator-Gate, Escalator Alley. Should we call it that? Escalator Alcatraz? That's what we're now calling the UN. How about that? Let's just call it Escalator Alcatraz. And in Trump having his issues with math that, obviously apply to tariffs, economics, jobs numbers, and everything, said that he was sabotaged, which, again, the French don't even have a word for sabotage, 3 times. The escalator, the teleprompter. I don't know what the third one is, other than he had to give a speech after having to walk up a flight of stairs. I honestly think the third one was he had to walk the stairs. Like, his own people and Melania trapped him on the escalator, so he couldn't just go, I'm not walking up.
It's like that old Stephen Wright joke about how you can't put an out of order sign.
No, that's Mitch Hedberg. Mitch Hedberg.
Oh, it's Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah. Which by the way is about 6 years after my escalator joke about how there's no such thing as a down escalator. It's a descalator, a down escalator.
Go dig him up and say I came up with that first.
Yeah, right. We love Mitch. And his fantastically groovy, easy way into it was fantastic. Yes, Ali Osher in the chat room says that Trump was sabotaged by Portland. Yeah. So um, over the obviously, and that's why he's sending troops into. Okay. Let's start with a couple of things. One is there was a guy on the Daily Caller this week has a I don't know, and I'll put this up on Substack in the next break because it's going to take a lot to get it going and it's too distracting to try and fix it at the same time. But one of the editors in cheat over at the Daily Caller, which is Tucker Carlson's little papier de resistance, has called for blood in the streets. Post,
Neat.
yes,
Cool.
I guess Charlie Kirk was the first, straw. The second straw was, of course, the shooter on the rooftop of that fired at the ICE facility. By the way, probably right up there with the anti-Semitic right-wing shooter that shot at the temple in, I believe it was Pittsburgh. Remember the Pittsburgh shooting at the synagogue where he ended up killing like 2 Presbyterians because right. That guy. Okay. This guy, the ICE shooter was right up there with this dude, ends up opening fire on a transport vehicle, killing 2 immigrant detainees, wounding a couple of more, no guards, insofar as I know, harmed in any way. And so on top of that, the third one obviously being the escalator, that this was the last straw for the Daily Caller editor at large. And the quote is this a call for violence? Yes. Enough is enough. I choose violence in all caps. And apparently this has to do with, I guess, like a person interviewing people at at one of the, I don't know, you'd call it a protest gathering, what have you, was slapped by a black woman. Oh, they were interviewing people in Harlem. That's what it was. And was slapped by a black woman. And he was like, that's it. But, because obviously there's too much left-wing violence, never mind January 6th and Timothy McVeigh, but and Charlotte riots and all that kind of stuff. Never mind all that. That doesn't count, just for the record. But this sort of, I guess they've hit their breaking point. Now, there's been a lot of talk on the right, especially lately, about how violence in America's history, revolutionary violence especially, was fomented by our enemies, by America's enemies, whether it was communist infiltration of the civil rights movement, which is well documented and real, but does not undermine the actual meaning of the civil rights movement. And ironically, for that example that they want to give, the civil rights movement won out over it, that the rioting and stuff that allegedly the Soviet Union was trying to foment a black breakaway. They called it the Black Belt in the South, where they were going to try and create another form of secession or, a breakaway republic of the black Soviet state of America. Didn't end up happening. The civil rights era created the Civil Rights Act. Lyndon Johnson signed it into law. It was a surprisingly kumbaya moment considering the violence that led up to it. And it was a big loss. It was a big L for anybody who had wanted to foment that violence, largely because you had a president at the time, and of course, Kennedy before him, who were open and receptive to the actual gripes of the people, the actual issues that were being brought before him, that redress of grievances that democracy and our Constitution allows for. And a coalition, a bipartisan coalition, in spite of like racist affronts by Southern governors and like groups of, white Michigan militia types and stuff, even against that potential violence, stood up to it. The American people came together. We had the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, and things started to change. Which was the exact opposite of, I guess, what the intended violence and rioting was supposed to lead to. That revolutionary violence that they were hoping would kick off never did, because our system works. And that was because at that time, Lyndon Johnson, with all of his failures, including being our singular most, like, I guess, HR problematic president, being that I believe the story is that a female reporter asked him what his plan was for Vietnam, and he took his Johnson, as it were, out of his pants and showed it to her and said, "This is my plan." That which I would argue is not presidential behavior. Just going to go out on a limb, but that with all that having been clearly an issue, the fact that he was the guy who shepherded this through was it undermined the counter-revolutionary and revolutionary forces' calls for violence at the time. Unfortunately, right now, and this was very apparent from the Charlie Kirk Memorial last weekend, we are not in that situation now. And the biggest danger to civil rest and function of our society is Donald Trump himself. Because obviously this, Daily Caller editor is really taking his cues from Donald Trump at a memorial for a man, who, say what you will about his philosophy evolving or not over time, his Christianity honest or not over time. His wife responded honorably to what had happened to him, and in keeping with her values, or at least as she states them to the world, she lived up to them, saying she forgives the man who killed her husband in front of everyone. And then Donald Trump follows it up, effectively spitting in her face, saying, I hate my opponents.
Yeah, and I don't wish the best for my enemies.
I don't wish the best for them at all. Right. Even though in this case, we're talking about your fellow Americans. You're talking about the citizens of your country. You're not talking about he's not talking about the German, the Japanese, or the Soviets or something during a different era in America. He's talking about other citizens. And the only solace and we can find in this situation is that he is also being so ridiculous in parallel so as to embarrass his own followers that even the cult is having a hard time, lining up behind him. It's taking a lot of prodding to get them to this kind of language, and it's still not working, which so far. And I think that's a key part of this so far. And there's a difference also between self-defense and violence, and that when you start muddying those waters, it's clear that you don't actually want the solution. You just want the teardown. You just want the destruction of the system itself, either because you think you will win in an authoritarian follow-up, meaning that you believe yourself to be the alpha that will take over, or you think something magical, like, mushrooms out of dung will suddenly sprout up like Atlantis out of the ashes in this kind of like communist phoenix. Neither of which has ever worked and ever will, just period. And I think the vast majority of people know this, and that's why people are increasingly aware that the crust is not the pizza, no matter what it says, and the outer rim of the slacktivists and online hate bots are actually not having as much of an impact as they used to. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Housebox Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Okay. All right. I'm almost there. Who in the chat room watched the show last night? And hey, Hal Vickery, good to see you. And Boston Bryant's here as well. What's up, man? Yay.
$30 seconds, guys.
Excellent. No, what in the Sam Hill is going on here? Right. I'll repost the show later on Substack because it's not going to work live. Sorry. It's being weird. I blame myself.
Again?
Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid. Not at all. Okay, let me open this up.
Now back to Hal Sparks on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT AM.
So one of the things, Johnny Million, that I think we all, are aware of in the what I would call spa not spa news cycle that Donald Trump is putting the country in, is this whole is this whole idea that there are Epstein, not Epstein, and that Trump, you could argue, but whether it's the story about Portland, which we'll get to in a moment, but hashtag rip Portland. I don't even know that there's anything there to enforce. Isn't it just a crater? As I understand, it was burned to the ground, 5 years ago, and doesn't exist.
Grave.
Right. But Trump said at the request of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, who is, by the way, trying to distract from allegations of an affair with her and Corey Lewandowski, and the fact that she is shepherding Homeland Security funds to his hometown or an area where he has financial interests on a port that's nearby as a business favor to a friend. And that will come out after this ridiculous administration is over. Just saying, just put a pin in that for later, because that will come up. Sorry, I'm just like, our system is not going to collapse. They're not going to be able to cancel the elections. There are too many people that on their side of the aisle that want their shot at power and know they won't get it if Don Jr. and then Eric and then Barron become president. So they want the system to function even as haphazardly as one. And they also, a lot of the right-wing media only makes money when they've got the left to blame, when they've got the Democrats to blame for everything. So that only works if they're in power some of the times. And right now, that's the big problem that they have across the board, is that the Democrats don't have any real power in government, with certain limitations just in process.
Still find a way to blame the Rebel Alliance.
That's right. Well, let's be honest. Like the Rebel Alliance was while they were rambunctious, not greatly organized, and that Han Solo fella, was smuggling spice during the entire, he was working with Noriega. I'm just saying, like if you want to work with like Jabba the Hutt, I'm just saying the Rebel Alliance was partly funded by an Iran-Contra like agreement with Jabba the Hutt. Otherwise, Han Solo wouldn't have been involved. It's the part we don't like to talk about, honestly. Spice. Yeah, it was spice. That's what he was bringing. He was bringing cinnamon and salt. Get out of here. Anyway, so spice. Adorable. Anyways, at the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, which is a hilarious statement, I am directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland.
Oh, poor. My sister-in-law is out there. I hope she's okay.
Well, let me finish the rest of the quote, and then we'll talk about how she's probably just fine. And any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. I am also, and this is the part that really stands out to everyone, I am also authorizing full force if necessary. What he means is deadly force. And this is, I gotta say, Donald Trump, this is how bad the stuff in the Epstein files is. Okay? Hear me out on this. This is how bad the stuff about Trump is in the Epstein files. That he needs a Kent state to distract from it. It would be better to have American soldiers killing American citizens on his watch, in his mind, and it wouldn't be, but in his mind, then release the Epstein files. I'm dead serious. That is all of this. There is everything. Everything is spa, not spa. This is all not spa. This is all. Let's not talk about the fact that 3 years after Virginia Giuffre was poached from the spa, where apparently she, Trump was under the impression she was doing the same job for him that she ultimately did for Jeffrey Epstein. And there was a cache of emails we'll also talk about this hour that Bloomberg got a hold of, 18,000 emails, which interestingly enough make it's no surprise that Trump is an awful part of that and everyone surrounding him, but largely because of Alan Dershowitz's part in that. We'll talk about that in a minute, because just when you thought he couldn't be any more gross, it's like hold my baby oil, did he? Yeah. So I also authorize full force thing is this part of not Spa, not Epstein. Like, he needs this stuff to kick off, because something like that, let's be honest, would eat up the news cycle, even if it meant Pete Hegseth goes to jail, even if it meant
murdering civilians.
Yes, even if it meant red states finally waking up, and along the lines of the free speech argument about Kimmel, which we'll also talk about, because did you see the Kimmel monologue, Johnny?
When I saw bits of it. Highlights,
yeah. And I thought it was very touching, and I appreciate where he was coming from. I respect the fact that he was honestly brokenhearted at the idea that people thought he was mocking the death of Charlie Kirk and not simply MAGA's response to it, and looking for a scapegoat that was easy and that could help them in their political aims. Which is, by the way,
he was mocking Trump's genuine disinterest in the subject.
Right. And I think ultimately the most, there were two truly, besides like TikTok videos, which nobody cares about, honestly, where people go nut picking and try to find the craziest person online and say this is indicative of how Democrats are responding, or those kind of things.
Right.
The two most disrespectful and disgusting things said about Charlie Kirk's death both came from Donald Trump. One, when he was asked about it, and he immediately deflected to the Epstein ballroom, and just almost signaling Charlie doesn't matter to me. That's really what he was saying. Is like he was almost jealous of the news coverage that a dead man was getting.
Oh, not almost, Hal.
Yes, he was. Yeah,
he's like, enough of that.
Right.
Already.
And let's talk about me again, which is, at its root, the egotism and stuff. We're not surprised by any of it, but it's still sort of shocking when you see it play out. Right. Yeah. And I'm glad we never get over the part where you're still able to get shocked at stuff. Even though, as my mother used to say, consider the source. Right. And we shouldn't be. The other one, of course, was what I referred to earlier when, Erica Kirk said she forgave her husband's assassin, and Trump comes out and directly contradicts at a memorial service, treating it like a rally. And that's the other thing, is that he commandeered this memorial service for his and turned it into a rally. Now, there's an argument that was the purpose of it, or what have you. You can have that thought about everyone else involved, but it was ultimately clear that was Trump's goal, was to seize this opportunity for his own ego gratification, beyond even its value as a rally, beyond even its value for a political cudgel. He brought that. He brought the entire memorial service to heel for himself, not for his political movement, not for his belief, not for America First or any of the concept of MAGA, any of the stuff, for himself as a person, which is, again, that's what makes it the most disgusting thing. And I've heard back and forth, and I know there are people in our chat room who will bring this up or whatever, that Erica Kirk was performative or whatever. Here's my rule. When someone's family member has been murdered, you give them the space to grieve and express their grief however it comes. I am not going to judge someone whose husband and the father of her children has died on whether or not I think she was honest in her rendition, or whether that's not the point, because your response to these situations is less about the person you're talking about and more about you. All that is a projection of your assumption about other human beings. And at some point, it's okay, and I would argue required, to be the bigger person, lest we devolve into this tit for tat that leads to the violence that Trump is hoping for. When you do that, even if you don't believe in the moral worth of it, you play into the political value that you give to Trump to fall into this back and forth. If you show yourself to be unforgiving in those moments, or unwilling to accept what was effectively from her an olive branch in this situation, that it need not lead to more violence. Trump said no, it should lead to more violence. Disregard what she said. So whether you believe her attempt was performative or not, the value is still real. The value is still real. And so seizing that value is what's best for safety, human life, and the care of your fellow Americans. If not, then just quite frankly, become a maggot. Fall into that, because the result will be the same. The result will be Trump triumphant. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million.
That's me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need to mute and pee in that order.
Thank God.
Be right back.
I'll jump in here I'll put myself in with the chat. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. Good to see you guys. You don't have to be a shitty person to recognize someone as being disingenuous. You don't even have to bother with recognizing someone as being disingenuous. There's no value in it. You don't get points for going, I think she's a liar. It's Real Housewife crap. It has no value. You can let it stand and address something else. This goes towards something that I forget. Let me see if I can find who said it about Oregon. Like the mayor, Keith Wilson. I'll bring that up in this. It's important, because what you talk about is also a
comeback.
Thank you. Is also a reflection of what you're not talking about.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
One of the people in our chat room brought up, I'm sure several have or whatever, and I'm sure it's all over the place, is this idea that you don't have to be a bad person to point out that someone is being disingenuous, I guess, in regard to Charlie Kirk's wife and what she said. What I will say is that you don't have to bring it up at all. What you're talking about is indicative not only of what you're saying and who your character is in that moment, but it's also indicative of what you're not talking about. That serves as much a distraction. The discussion about whether or not Charlie Kirk's widow was honest in her grief ate up so much screen time on people's phones and back and forth and comment sections and the like. And think of what people weren't talking about. Again,
do you think that like Russian bots fuel that fire?
Absolutely. And so there's no need to fall into it. But there's also the Mayor Keith Wilson of Portland said something very specific about the Trump sending in 100 National Guard troops to surround this ICE facility that he was doing. And it was a great point that he made. He goes, the federal mobilization is a distraction. Imagine if the federal government sent instead 100 teachers or 100 engineers or 100 addiction specialists. Now, this is specific to Portland, and you can understand that because they are recovering from their full legalization and then their walk back from that because it ended up killing a lot of their citizens. It was a mistake, and it was bad for public health and addicts themselves. So they're reacting to that. And but the 100 teachers, 100 engineers, the point of that statement is exactly kind of what I'm talking about, is that while you're chasing his laser pointer or arguing about the genuineness of a right-wing speaker's emotional state, it's what you're not talking about, which is 100% the goal. Ron Wyden also spoke about the mobilization and said, I urge Oregonians not to fall into Trump's attempt to incite violence. Just as I did in 2020, I will lead our delegation and state officials to oppose any unjustified increase in federal forces. The point is to ratchet up violence because he knows the forces exist there to do it, effectively draw them out and use those people as an excuse to attack the regular citizenry, to enforce a form of martial law, to push this authoritarian control and extend it during his time in office as much as he can as a way of seizing resources, money, federal funds. I mean, honest to God, there's a feeling, around sort of Stephen Miller's section of the White House that he genuinely is in his anti-immigrant, neo-fascistic belief system or whatever, is a true believer in this. But everybody else around him is going, do you know how much money we could have made off of something like Kent State if we knew it was going to happen? Right there. That's the dedication. Right. That's the dedication to the cause that you're seeing around him. That there is nothing they can't exploit. And by playing into that, you give them that gift. You are part and parcel to the violence when you engage in that. That's why sit-ins were so powerful. That's why the violence that was meant to be fomented even by what was the equivalent of Russian bots at the time, which was not allegedly, it actually happened, communist infiltration of civil rights organizations in the 60s, didn't end up, making the government fall and turn us into the Soviet Socialist Republic of America. The reason it didn't work is because nonviolence won out, that the people in the spirit of the time was about bonding with our fellow Americans, not allowing us to set, citizen against citizen. And I believe in large part, he's picking his targets specific to the higher chance of some sort of, violent pushback from local groups that have been at this for a long time. Again, a good portion of, they will call it left-wing violence. They will call it, Democrats or liberals. They will link it to, to groups that they associate with Democrats. But in reality, none of the people that are going to engage in any violence have voted in their entire lives. If they're, been around for at least in the last decade or so, they are not engaged in the democratic process any more than the Bundys are, or the Bundy clan that took over the national, the grazing land, or that national park office for a little while, or the militia groups that are in the woods around Ted Nugent. Same people, different target. Same people, different target. Like whether it's a People's Liberation Strike Force or a two-way freedom strike force, the result is always the same. A lot of dead civilians, no real movement, and a ratcheting up of authority and the militarization of the police in direct response to the violence. And I would argue, in other administrations, there may have been people in those administrations, Dick Cheney style, that kind of wanted the violence to ratchet up so they could take advantage of it. There were others that were just, quite frankly, reactionary on both sides. That violence begets violence, begets violence, begets violence, and the stacking of arms and riot control police, and the difference between nightsticks and guns on a cop's hip over a period of time, becomes a chicken and egg argument.
Yeah.
But the solution is ultimately always the same, which is peaceful, using all the tools as if they still exist and insisting that they do, and living up to the highest standards of the movement that you care about, with every human life having meaning, even those of people you don't care for or you don't believe in, because we are seeing live what the disdain for that thought creates.
Right.
It just spirals into exactly what Trump would want, right? And that's the issue that we're going to deal with during Trump's legacy here. And his authorization, quote, of full force is a direct response to that ratcheting of stuff. And the only way it doesn't get worse and extend is if it's meted out, if it's confronted with nonviolent protest and quiet resolve. That's the unfortunate part of it, because if given any in, he will go, "See, I told you."
Yep.
And that will result not in, by the way, him or anybody around him, or even the people that would foment the sort of like anarchist Portlanders that run down and kind of throw a Molotov at anything that looks official, or is also a mom and pop shop whenever they get the chance. Those aren't the ones that are harmed in this. It's everybody in the middle, everybody who gets caught in the crossfire. And the disregard for those people is one of the I think the most horrifying parts of, quote, revolutionary thought. They're always gunning for somebody else to be shot while they're writing screeds about it from the warm side of a bay window.
Yeah.
And that's, again, playing into his hands. One of the greatest things about when the Nazis marched in Skokie was the response that people had, which was to close their windows and drapes, and they marched down an empty street. They had the right to do it. Freedom of speech remained intact. Nobody responded to it, and it had zero impact. It became a mockery of the movement. That's what really, put it down, and made it not happen again. And so that's, I think, a valuable lesson that people can learn. Now, in the middle of that, like I said, all of this is spa, not spa. This is all about the Epstein files. This is all about not talking about it. There was a leak that Project Veritas's former owner, O'Keefe, released this video of him talking to somebody who allegedly works at Trump's DOJ, saying that Trump's not in there, but he's protecting his rich donor friends. I would argue that's a directed leak that they are trying to they are literally sending out. Yes, that's right. Don't feed the presidential troll. Exactly, Alyosha. That is, don't give him what he wants in this situation. Embarrass him by making him look, impotent against the actual concerns of the citizens, not ones he creates out of thin air. Violence for violence sake. And in this particular instance, I think that person that allegedly leaked to O'Keefe was a strategic leak on purpose. This is my own personal belief. It's one of those ways, distracted from everybody else. He's just protecting the donor class because he's trying to, do what it takes to get Republicans elected. And these people have money. So as much as you may not like it, it beats the men and women sports people, right? Getting elected, right? That's the thought form. That's the egg he's trying to lay in the brain of maggots to pull them away from chasing him down about this stuff. And the reality is that everything he is doing, whether it's telling troops in Portland they can use full force, or labeling Antifa as a domestic terror organization and going after them as if it's an actual organization at this point, or trying to ratchet up violence at a memorial service specifically, or gaslighting his own followers that prices are coming down, or saying he ended 7 wars and he deserves because he stopped Azerbaijan and Albania from fighting each other.
Yeah.
All of that, as horrifying as violence in the streets of Portland where National Guard troops kill American citizens, as bad as that could possibly be, what's in the Epstein files about Trump is worse for him. That's his belief. Otherwise, he wouldn't be engaging this at all. It would be, you'd see similar stuff to the first time, tough on crime flexing that every right-wing Republican goes for. But this is special.
What it also tells me is that it's bad enough, and the usual game plan of deflecting, saying it's a scam, it wasn't me, he is afraid won't work.
Well, I beyond afraid, I think it is shown not to. Surprisingly, it is not. The Tylenol thing is another example of that. Like his speech at the UN where he's saying your countries are going to hell and starting this whole back and forth about immigration.
What the hell was that?
Well, he's the first sort of president to rule by Reddit thread. Like he's just parroting stuff that he has seen he's a troll. This is trolling. This is the troll presidency. It is genuinely that. We've known that it has been that way for a while, but it is never been more obvious. But it's all he's got. The jobs numbers aren't going to save him. The tariffs aren't going to produce anywhere near as, the money he's saying. The $17 trillion of investment that he says has come in just immediately isn't real. Axios did a breakdown of what numbers are you talking about? And they talked to the White House, and the White House's answers were even more pitiful than you would think, which is what he means is that they're going to play out over the next decade. But, it's kind of budgetary punt. The jobs numbers suck right now, but they're going to be great a year from now or 2 years ago when these factories open. By the way, factories that won't have any people in them. An AI factory is not a factory. It's a server farm. And it's like rows of banks of computers and GPUs. There's no people in there. There's janitors and people occasionally text who would have to fix a problem, but it's not a foundry the way Trump thinks it is. It's bizarre that he thinks that way. It's so stupid. It's nearly painful to envision how you could believe that. But he does, or at least he pretends to. And that these factories are going to produce jobs for lots of people, which they are absolutely not. If anything, they're going to eliminate jobs. And that is something that will have an upside and a downside. And you have to prepare for that like it's a real future. We have to prepare for a break. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to share some of the spa parts so that we can see exactly what this distraction is all about. We'll be back. Man, the draft emails that they have of him trying to, when he got arrested, he hired all these crisis intervention people and PR people to try and help him shape his language, one of whom ended up working in the Trump administration the first time around. Weird.
Yeah.
There's another guy. Let's see. This is. Yeah, I gotta say.
Stand by, we're coming back.
Excellent.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So over the course of Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which was long and storied, 25 years, where he was as close as anybody has ever been to Donald Trump. The closest thing he's had to an actual friend outside of Roy Cohn. And again, Donald Trump has only had 2 non-transactional friendships in his entire life: Roy Cohn and Jeffrey Epstein. That's it.
Yeah.
Everybody else has been a sycophant, a hangers-on, or an employee. Or a business rival he pretended to have a friendship with that he would call and blather to, and then they would hang up and roll their eyes. But there is one bridge person around this circle that Trump has not only used as a, has had moral support for, or immoral support from, is a guy named Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz, who was, I think, on OG's team, right? And he was, famously, while he was working for Trump and Epstein, or maybe Epstein first, when he was working for Epstein, wrote an op-ed saying that the age of consent for girls should be dropped to the time of their first period. Legally. And now we know, obviously, by the way, that in correspondence with that, in 2006, Dershowitz is, I'm going to have to look up the date on that actual op-ed, but around the same time, he's trying to help Epstein with his legal problems, including checking out what the law says about flying an underage girl from one state where, say, the age of consent is 18 to another state where the age of consent is 16, having sex with her there, and then bringing her back. Is that a violation of the law? That can he be tried on this? This was, Epstein said, let's also look at sex tourism laws, going someplace with specific intent to have underage sex. When he was talking to this person Weber, who worked with Epstein, one of the people who worked in this, who, by the way, went to work, Mitch Weber, that's who it was. Mitch Weber, who ended up working in the White House as a associate counsel and special assistant to Donald Trump, and worked with Epstein and Dershowitz. Shocker. And this is from the Bloomberg thing. They got a hold of 18,000 emails, and they go, those presents in Epstein's inbox lasted less than a year. Weber memorialized a key moment in the Florida case. He took shorthand notes during a February 2006 meeting with Epstein's legal defense team and 2 members of the Palm Beach County Attorney's Office and a detective. These girls are, this is Dershowitz's statements during that meeting that he wrote in the memo. Weber wrote down what Dershowitz said. This is a quote from Alan Dershowitz. These girls are self-described prostitutes. They don't feel harmed, and they're out for money. He said, Epstein is decimated already. He hasn't slept in months. I want to leave here and tell him we've got this resolved. Why can't we figure something out today? That was in the meeting in 2006 with Dershowitz and the Palm Beach attorneys. These girls are self-described prostitutes. That's from Dershowitz. Now, let's be abundantly clear. These girls are underage. Children cannot prostitute themselves. They can be lured into prostitution. They can be trafficked. They can be abused. They can be blackmailed into it, but they cannot willingly offer themselves for prostitution because they are not adults and do not have the ability to do so under law. And at the same time he was making this case to the Palm Beach attorneys, he's writing an op-ed saying we need to lower it to 12, which, by the way, is the number that Donald Trump dropped around the same time on Howard Stern's show, because they were all talking. They were all talking about this. This was the chit-chat around Dershowitz, Epstein, Trump. And again, Dershowitz is effectively a conduit between Epstein and the people that he was having to distance himself from, working with these people or hanging around or being a member of Mar-a-Lago or a guest there on the regular. Dershowitz would show up to these people and effectively, shepherd the talking points because they would all line up like he was carrying those, those talking points to them. So, an assistant state attorney told Epstein's team her office had an ethical obligation to consult the victims before making any deals. As they discussed possible outcomes, Dershowitz said he refused to make Epstein, quote, into a public pariah.
Okay.
Weber, whose work for Dershowitz extended past the Harvard Law commencement that June, went on to field sensitive questions from Epstein. Weber wrote, "I'm sorry, I was a little confused about what you were asking on the phone. I see what you're asking now. The question is, what would happen if someone were to transport a minor for sex or transport oneself with the intent to have sex with a minor into a state in which the age of consent is below 18, assuming the minor is above the age of consent in that given state? And your intuition was right. The answer is there is no violation of law." That was going to be a defense they were building. And that's when he said, let's also look into the sex tourism laws. This is Weber working under Dershowitz with Jeffrey Epstein. Dershowitz would also be who Trump would hire to defend him against impeachment, work on his team, and has always been, one of his sort of, in case of emergency, break glass lawyers to talk to. This is why. This is why send the troops to Portland. Tell them they can shoot people if they need to. Why? Is it because Portland's on fire and there's something specific on? No. It's because of this. It's because every day there is this drip of information that is coming out. Either stuff that is legally able to be released by Democrats in the House that have gotten access to new files that have not been released by Pam Bondi in her little binders she's handing out to right-wingers to cover for stuff, specifically hiding this stuff. Or because members of, someone around the Epstein estate is releasing some stuff or threatening to release some stuff or getting close to releasing it, and they know it's coming out in the coming weeks. And so ratcheting up this, we are literally watching violence being fomented on the streets of America. Innocent people being rounded up and caged, specifically to create outrage, as it should. News cycle, crank up the outrage machine on the news, as it should. Make Fox and other organizations defend him on the issues of immigration and the like. Get them back into the fold, defending him on the principle of the ideas that allegedly started these things in the first place. All to distract from the stuff that is coming out and has been coming out and will come out in the next little bit. And it's not going away. There's going to be a breaking point where the stuff that is coming out is hitting a groundswell, and his own people, the maggots, by and large, are not going to be able to walk away from it. He's not being able to shut it down. The hoax thing didn't work. The unsigned memo from Pam Bondi and listen to me, Bongholio and Kash Patel didn't work. Kash Patel firing a bunch of FBI agents who didn't pass a loyalty test, in a midnight massacre, on a Friday night massacre last night, isn't going to work because Trump's own loyalists, followers, are too attached to this story. And that's not going to go away. I have to say that the number of people in Trump's orbit that have shown up, Elon Musk, Steve Bannon, helping to, and Dershowitz attempting to help Jeffrey Epstein rehab his image. In essence, to help Donald Trump early on, to help Donald Trump's presidency, to help his run for the presidency, and also to protect his presidency when it became a liability through Alex Acosta, him giving him that job and basically as a reward for giving Epstein the sweetheart deal to try and bury it the first time. You could look at Alex Acosta's under the table deal as the first unsigned memo, right? and giving Pam Bondi the job, same thing, to cover for the fact and keep her close to the fold because she could have torn up that non-prosecution agreement against him during her time as AG in Florida, but did not. And she was rewarded with the highest, legal job in our country. This is all everything that we're seeing. I would argue even his line about "I hate my opponent" at the Kirk Memorial. Those instances, we know that it will set people off. That the news will respond to what he says, and it will eat up who knows, a half hour, 2 hours, 5 hours of the news cycle. The entire purpose is to distract from this stuff and hopefully make people have a bigger emergency to deal with than the reality that Donald Trump was Jeffrey Epstein's wingman for a quarter century. And he was not just part and parcel to the schemes that Epstein had, but a facilitator in many ways, a partner, a cohabitator and serviced these things. He was not blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein by and large because he was a part of it. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Philip Bitner will be joining us from Kyiv in just a moment. And man, was it a big flip this week in American policy. We'll see, but wow. We'll be back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There we go. Let's put... Yes, I do. I see him. There he is.
Hey.
Got him. Yeah. Let me put this in preview mode and I'll bring him in. This guy, there he is. Excellent. Very funny. Put this in the middle here and then publish. Whip. There we go.
Yo.
There he is. Hi. Yeah, so we didn't get the chance to talk on Wednesday because I was traveling. But
right,
his turnaround at the UN after that meeting, I mean, we'll see. I mean, well, we'll save it for the air because there's, I mean, obviously, you want to talk about like people not believing what Erica Kirk said on the, as far as being disingenuous or their beliefs about that. What Trump said about this, it's hard to pace because he's so transactional. It just may have run out of, he just may have run out of rope.
Yeah, and he might have people who are actually telling him the truth of the lay of the land here. So.
Yeah. Hang on to that because it's a big deal.
Check here that I've got. Sorted out here.
We can see you and hear you perfectly.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you seem great.
Good.
Oh, even better now.
Ooh, your audio got very nice.
Okay, good. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it went from roomy to that close mic. Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be back in just one moment. Share the show and hit the like, everybody, if you would. Yeah, Janelle says he doesn't want to be on the losing side. I think you're right. I think it's more like he doesn't want to be seen as a loser. And that's increasingly what it is, that it's a personal ego thing. But we'll save that for the air because it's as important to I'm going to get this out over the radio too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they are not winning on the front line.
Oh my God! Yeah. It's
getting ridiculous.
Brutalized, right? Yeah, it's rough, man. It's like it's been gross. Like we're back to like that slump a year ago where the Russians were just before they brought in the the North Koreans, where they were just like,
Yeah, and before they influenced
Stand by, coming back.
Thank you.
Congress.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chicago. And when they had him on side,
Mhm.
screwing him.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Plus-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
This may singularly be the most consequential week in American politics since the election, in terms of our relationship with Ukraine and how that plays out. Philip Bitner is joining us from Kyiv, host of On the Edge, a great show that you should subscribe to his channel and watch on YouTube. Welcome, Phil. Obviously, I'm curious about what the response was, because regardless if people think there's going to be follow through, the language that Trump used this week was an extraordinary 180, especially for him.
Yeah, especially for him, and for him to have gone from "you don't hold any of the cards." What was that?
February
3 months ago,
or May,
in the Oval, to now saying that it's possible that Ukraine might get all of its territory back, to 91 borders is, I mean, that's a bizarre 180.
Right.
And there is a lot of skepticism here. There's hope. Obviously the Ukrainians would like to see the administration maintain that position, but they also recognize that Trump is an undependable or somebody that they could change his decision in 2 weeks' time. So look,
he's flippant, he's unreliable, he's transactional, and his brain is turning to tapioca. Right.
Yeah. All of that.
Yeah.
But there is also a lot of talk, not only here in Ukraine, but amongst Western powers and people who pay attention to this kind of thing, that he may have been briefed recently on the fact that Russia's losing this war.
Yeah.
Badly.
Yes.
Really, really badly.
Materially, obviously, and truly. Like, not hyperbole. Like, it's I also think, and I'm curious what your thought is on this, it's parallel to the economic news that's been coming out of Russia that maybe Trump and also King Charles, that was another play we'll talk about as well. But like that the economic news around Russia may have played as much a part as the dead on the front lines, which he seemed to be fixated on for a while. But how they're being rebuffed, that the economy in Russia is getting it's striking how increasingly bad it has become.
Yeah, and it's touching the lives of normal Russians, where they're starting to have to, spend hours in, in a line to get to a gas station. I mean, think of what happened in the 70s with Carter when the gas crisis happened. This is far worse than that,
right?
Not just because of the scale of it, but because Putin has been promising his people for years that this was not going to affect them, that they could conduct this war.
It's almost like the same, like a story, like it's Vietnam or Afghanistan, but from a distance. Like it's being paid, like what the Bush administration, like paying for Afghanistan on a credit card, putting it off and not adding it to the regular budget. So it didn't show up. You didn't see the deficit that it was creating. You didn't see the trillions it was adding to the debt because it was kind of punted. He kind of asserted that from the beginning, although they've never been able to do it. They had to switch to a war footing, as far as their economy goes. But that, again, that has a short runway before you have to start pulling from elsewhere. Yes?
And the Ukrainians have been pounding their fossil fuel infrastructure, not just in terms of what they export to get money for their war, when it comes to their shadow fleet that they put crude on or whatever they put, whatever it is, and then they ship it off to China or India or somebody else who's willing to turn a blind eye to the sanctions. Your average Russian citizen is now having to change their lifestyle to accommodate the difficulties that are incurring, because the Russians, the Ukrainians are also hitting not just export capability, but domestic consumption of fossil fuel.
The
So
processing plants and refineries.
Drive your car.
Yeah.
And we're in late, we're late spring, early autumn, soon to be winter, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse for the Russians. And they're not making significant gains on the battlefield. In fact, it looks like they're actually suffering some very bad setbacks around some of the areas that have extended themselves to try and make a success. And look, and also, Hal, you gotta understand. We were filming, so one of my employees who works for me at On the Edge came in to film an introduction to this week's episode, because I like to film the interview, digest it for a bit, and then I write an introduction.
Sure.
And so she comes in a few days after I have filmed the interview. She films the introduction, and we kind of chat about the way things are.
Right.
And she was saying, one of the things we Ukrainians are kind of worried about is that the possibility of another mobilization might be on the horizon for the Russians, and that would mean an influx of a lot of soldiers.
Right.
Which I recognized, and we don't often, necessarily agree 100%, but we talk these things out. And my point was, if they go for another round of mobilization, if the Russians start calling up more soldiers, it's going to get more and more clear to the Russian people that they're losing this war, and that will not go well for Vladimir Putin. And so all of these things combined. Oh, and also in addition to that, she said to me, have you seen the weather reports for the next 3 weeks? And I said, no, I hadn't seen them. She said, it rained. Yeah, we're going to get rain for the next 3 weeks.
Right.
Now, those of you who are students of history understand what's called the Rasputitsa in this part of the world, which is when you get this massive downpouring of rain that turns everything which has been previously dry because of the summer.
Is that like a rat sputin rain?
It's the Rasputitsa.
Yeah.
Everything becomes mud.
Right.
It's just it happens on both ends of the extreme weather exchanges that happen here. So when you're moving into winter, all of this dry earth suddenly gets a massive influx of water, and it just turns to sludge. And then alternatively, on the other end of things, when everything is frozen and the weather turns warm, it unfreezes, and yet again there is this sludge that happens. And it throughout Russia's history, throughout the history of the Russian Empire, this has been an aspect of warfare.
Right.
And it's about to happen again, which means unless Russia makes some sort of massive successful offensive operation within the next literally 2 weeks to a month, I'm being generous, they are suddenly going to find themselves in a place where, unless you're driving on a hardtop on a highway,
Yeah.
you are going to be driving and putting their soldiers into positions where they are going to be absolutely sunk into this
It's
thick,
it's like Operation
wet,
Trenchfoot.
sticky. Yeah, and it's Barbarossa. It's arguably Barbarossa as well.
Mm-hmm.
The Germans launched their offensive into the Soviet Union too
Right.
late, and so they got caught up in this, and then Napoleon got caught up in this. I mean, this is the thing about Russia and this borderland area of Europe where the temperature and the soil and all of the elements combine to make it such that you can't move more than 5-10 miles
Yeah.
at any stretch unless you're on a paved road. But because of the modern technology and everything with drones, you're a target if you're
Yes. You can't
restrained
get out. You
to
can't escape. And they already leave their
yeah.
wounded behind. Can you imagine what the priority becomes if Putin's insisting that they keep pushing forward? The priority is going to be, if you're moving at all, you better be moving forward. And if you try to move back, you're going to get shot. We've seen this before. And then, of course, what do you think the priority becomes for wounded Russian soldiers at that point? That you think anybody goes and helps them? We've already dealt with mobile crematoriums and them, leaving them there specifically so they can say they deserted, so they don't have to pay the restitution to the families.
Somewhere in some place in one of my storage units, I have a bottle of vodka that I bought in Moscow that is labeled Ni Shagu Nazad with a picture of Stalin. And if you translate the term Ni Shagu Nazad, it's not a step back. And that was the thing that happened in the Second World War, where they had intelligence officers. Then it was the NKVD, which would eventually transition into the KGB and is now either GRU or FSB. But regardless, this was a slogan in the Second World War where they literally did say, not a step back. And if you were a retreating Russian soldier, you were liable to be shot as you were trying to escape from, the German onslaught. And this mentality is still maintained.
Yeah.
And it's going to get worse and worse and worse for Russia. And one of the most interesting things that I saw out of the Trump statement that he made when he was, I think it was the one when he was sat with Zelensky, was that Russia's losing this war. Russia could really, and it was that acknowledgement and that open statement of piercing the image of Russia as a kind of an ultimate force that
he called them a paper tiger. He literally referred to them as a paper tiger. Where he got that from is the question. We're going to take a break. We'll come right back, because where he might have gotten this change from has a lot to do with how easily led he is by his ego and how desperately he wants to be a part of something lasting, even though he is not going to. We'll cover that when we come back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. What I am referring to, and I'll show you this. Where is it? Is the fact that the Telegraph is saying that King Charles is actually behind his U-turn on Ukraine. That they had a lot of talks about this and about the partnership, but that they had we've had with the UK about fighting fascism and fighting, the Nazis and fighting authoritarianism and all that. And Trump so desperately wants, you could tell Mar-a-Lago, like what he's doing with the White House, like he desperately wants to be a royal. And so the idea that he could somehow align himself with the British royal family, besides maybe that explains his Epstein-Andrew relationship for years as well, besides all the other reasons. But Charles called him out at that dinner and brought it up in public, and then they allegedly talked about it behind the scenes as well. And that this was the big
I could totally see that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it was, I don't know as it was any one thing, but yeah, I could totally see that.
But in the languaging of it and why he turned around.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chicago.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
One need only look at what Trump is doing to the White House in his trips to Riyadh and recently to the UK, that he desperately wishes he was a royal. Then it wouldn't be as embarrassing to be a second-generation rich kid, because that's what royalty's all about. In America, you're kind of a loser if you had to rely on daddy's gold to get where you are. But in monarchies, that's how it always worked. And so you get that free pass. And so he's trying to slather the White House in gold. He's obviously Mar-a-Lago was meant to be this kind of like mini Buckingham Palace kind of thing. I mean, it's a dump, but it's his little faux castle. He's playing Pillow Fort down there in West Palm Beach with Mar-a-Lago. But one of the Guardian wrote an article about this, and this seems to be a general belief that there were these sideline meetings, not just with Zelensky at the UN, which also had an impact, but Trump meeting with King Charles, and was very moved by like taking a tour of the grounds and all this. Like he's definitely easily led by glitz and glamour and pomp and circumstance. And the king stood up next to him and said, he made a point specifically that the U.S. and the U.K. have fought, authoritarian, forces that mean to break apart Europe before. And Trump, between that and his talk with Zelensky, seems to have, I suppose, fallen back into like, he literally came out and said, he called Russia a paper tiger. He said that there's a chance that Ukraine could claim its borders all the way back to the 91 borders. And then on top of that, you've got these stories coming out repeatedly that the economy in Russia is practically keeling over. The article again in the Guardian: is Trump right about Russia's economy on the brink of collapse? If Trump thinks so, after all of his defending of Vladimir Putin after all this time, if he's coming to that conclusion, how bad like Russia's economy is so bad, Tucker Carlson can't even go over there and make it look good. He's not planning a second trip to help them clean this mess up. That's how bad it is. And if Trump is noticing and he's bringing up 91 borders, it must be what he's hearing from both allies and assets must be far worse than anything that, they've been selling to the public for a while. And, J.D. Vance's certain take on it, certainly.
Yeah. And I mean, Trump doesn't want to be on the losing side of anything. And I increasingly am seeing, even among the MAGA crowd, the recognition that Russia's going to lose this war.
Yeah.
They are. They're just going to lose this war.
Right.
The best that they can hope to gain is not equal to the cost that they have spent on doing this. And also it has to be mentioned when you talk about Charles, Trump's mother, who he had a very difficult difficult relationship with.
Sure.
But it was well known that she was an ardent royalist.
Yes.
She was a
He
big
says so.
fan.
Right. He says so.
Yeah.
He mentions it like, she always watched the Queen. She'd love to see the Queen come on. It's like, I mean, he has this pedestrian kind of relationship to what she was talking about, but it clearly had an impact on him and it mattered around the household.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that has an effect on him. You know, when he gets to, you know, Windsor or Buckingham Palace or whatever it is the Brits trot out for him, because they know, you know, you want to make the baby happy.
Right.
Give the baby his candy. Give the baby his candy. He'll be happy. And they know that very well. And actually, you know what? Also, by the way, the Brits know really well how to manage the royals. The royals are actually a really big asset for the Brits when it comes to diplomatic relations.
Absolutely.
So they know exactly how to use them. And I am not necessarily a royalist. As you know, I'm a British citizen, but I'm not necessarily a royalist. I was a fan of Queen Elizabeth, but the rest of the tradition of royalism in Britain, I'm not necessarily a fan of. But I do recognize their usefulness, and it's not just tourism.
Yeah.
You get some minor royal that flies into some small little country and, you know, gets the prestige of having a royal visit. It actually does change diplomacy, economic deals, things like that. So there is a use to them still, I conflict as an American who is also a Brit. I conflict with this, but nevertheless, I mean, Charles, inviting Trump to Windsor for that massive banquet. I mean, that had to be massively
impressive,
influential on
I agree.
his ego. So I have no doubt. And then Zelensky also coming in. But I think there's something happening behind closed doors. I think
there's other details going on. Realities.
I think there are other details going on. And military leaders who are going to Trump and saying, they're going to lose. The Russians
Dan
are going to
Cain.
lose.
I think you're right. I think Dan Raisin Cain is giving him the straight dope no matter what. You know, the Hegseth says no matter what, you know, which is just blather outwardly. I don't even know. I think Hegseth is sort of like rooting against Ukraine, but is begrudgingly deferring to people who actually know what's going on. And that would be Dan Cain. Dan Cain is the guy that Trump thinks is a tough guy in the room, and certainly is compared to everybody else there and on his own. And when he talks about this, he's clearly giving him a real assessment. Using
and
president-friendly language, maybe. Yes.
Yeah, and Keith Kellogg's last visit to Moscow did not go well.
Right.
He arrived. Kellogg was left on the tarmac, is my understanding. He was kept waiting by Putin for hours, which is a tactic that Putin often uses to humiliate.
Yeah, right. Yes. Kinda, but I mean, there is that element of like he thinks power comes from making other people wait, and it's so chintzy. It's such a lazy way of doing it, but it works with certain people, and it works with, you know, certain cultures. It doesn't in others. You know, and
Kellogg was not happy with his last visit. That is for sure. He left early. He, by all reports, when he left the Kremlin, he felt insulted, and there was some sort of slight that he felt had been delivered to him. Things are not going well with the Kremlin's narrative, and you know, their advance on certain strategic towns out in the east, notably Pokrovsk, is not going well. They've got troops surrounded, and again, we're getting to the time of the year when massive military operations are very difficult because of the lay of the land. So I think I'm going to take a shot with this because I don't know for sure, because aside from the Charles thing and the Kellogg visit, we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. I think somebody has told Trump, Russia cannot win this war.
Yeah.
It's a done deal.
Somebody he believes.
So
somebody he believes finally
and
said
with it. And also with maybe some backing of satellite imagery and kind of battle assessment and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That they're not going to win. And Trump it doesn't like to be a loser, you know, and so maybe that is part of the whole equation, is that he's been told all of these factors combined together come to a point where he's just like, well, the Russians are going to lose.
Yeah.
So I better
and
get on that side.
And we can make a better, I can make a better deal for resources with Ukraine if they win than I could with Russia, which may break the deal in the future as well. And so, we might as well seize back that territory. If it's full of all Zelensky and those guys have to say is it's full of, rare earth minerals. And if we have control of it, you'll have a great deal and you'll be able to exploit it. But if Russia has control of it, or we make a deal with just what land we have, they're going to try and seize that land and kill your people in the future, just to, or cause unrest here to do it. So we got to take a break. But when we come back, the Russian sub Novorossiysk suffered a fuel leak in the Mediterranean. There was oil pumping stations in Chuvash Republic have stopped their operations. It's just like there is bad news all over Russia. We'll be back. Yeah. Like it's kind of like they lost another Su-34. Like just as they're trying to get aircraft back in the air because they don't have the infantry.
Short break coming back in 15.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
And then, do we have questions, Johnny? I don't know if you have to farm. Yeah, cool.
We don't have a ton, but we do.
Okay, because I didn't ask for them yet, so it's good that we already have them.
Now, back to Hal Sparks on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back. Johnny Million is farming questions from our chat room at infotainmentwars.com on the YouTube page. Please subscribe. Please help us out. Just subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. Just do it. And there's a bunch of, but what I was mentioning before we went to break, a Russian sub, I believe it's a diesel sub, was on the brink of flooding. It was part of their Black Sea fleet, and it's been in the Mediterranean, I guess, because it can't get back to where it was supposed to go. But it apparently it's unfit to continue its mission, and it's at risk of exploding right now. And this is apparently an indication of like the failures of the rest of the Russian Navy, that maintenance and normal order have already collapsed in a bunch of these areas where they're tourniqueting certain areas. What you don't need, you don't bother to service anymore. They're in an emergency posture. And then of course the Ukrainians hit this oil pumping station in Chuvash. It has stopped producing gasoline. Pumping oil, and then they hit the refinery that the oil that used to come from it went, so it's no longer refining, and that's for internal gasoline. So gasoline prices in Russia are climbing. At the same time, they are citing 1% growth, which, by the way, after 2 years of no growth whatsoever, 1% growth is rehab, if anything, if it's believable. That's the question: are any of the numbers from from Russia believable at this point? Yeah.
Well, I mean, they lie about their status all the time. So, right. I mean, I wouldn't say right now is what Russia is saying believable or not. I would say it's just never trust what Russia says, just because as a matter of course. But I mean, they're in trouble. They're in real trouble, and Ukraine is suffering too. There's issues with manpower and mobilization and
Yeah.
all sorts of things. One of the big things that came out of Zelensky's speech, and we should talk more about this actually, but Zelensky's speech at the UN General Assembly had a lot of different things in it. And one of them was that he was going to, that the Ukrainian military industrial complex has gotten to such a stage that they are now in a state of war, willing to sell exports of their weaponry, because this week's episode of On the Edge, we interview the CEO of a drone company called Norda, and one of the things that we spoke about was the fact that once Kiev and the Zelensky administration allows for export, what they can then do is they can sell their drones, which are undoubtedly, because they are battle tested, some of the best drones in the world.
Right.
I mean, arguably, I would say far better than the American drone program, because they're testing these things in the field, and they're getting, they're altering AI, and they're altering systems and lift capability, and mainframe that will allow them to travel far longer, far more distant areas than a lot of people in the world have. And so Zelensky's announcement at the UNGA that they would now start allowing export of their weaponry means that they will be getting money coming back, which will then allow them to invest in more production, capability.
Right. Yeah.
So, the fact that Ukraine has gotten to that point is extraordinary. And they, if they are, they're in a death match with Russia, and they have gotten to the point where they're like, you know what? We'll sell some of these weapons that we don't necessarily need on the front line. And instead, what we will do is we will buy artillery shells, or we'll buy Bradleys, or we'll buy Patriot air defense systems. And one of the other things that Trump said recently, during the UNGA, was that we're going to allow the Europeans to buy stuff, and they can do with it as they please.
Right.
And if they want to give it to Ukraine, then great. And so if Ukraine is generating profit by selling drones because they have excess capacity, then they can buy different things from NATO. It's going to get worse and worse for Russia. I do not see, unless something really unexpected happens, I do not see a way for Russia to win this war. I just don't.
Yeah.
And I've been saying it, since we've been talking about it.
Absolutely. From the beginning.
And it's getting to the point where it's unavoidable. And even the president of the United States, who I still believe was at one point, may still be, I don't know, compromised by the Kremlin, even he is making public statements of, actually, Ukraine has a really good chance of winning.
Well, he's at the point where a P-tape is actually a welcome distraction from the Epstein files. So, whatever they have on him may be shy of what's actually he's afraid of coming out. So, if it did come out, it would be a scandal that he could manage compared to the other stuff. So, that very well may be it. Also, there was Russia announced that it was going to help Iran build a nuclear facility, a reactor for $25 billion. Which, again, one of Trump's things was he wanted this relationship with Iran to even out and become peaceful so that we could sell them nuke tech. That was one of the other things. Like, we'll manage it and we'll sell it to them, because he's trying to patch holes in his economy that he created, and pay for his tax breaks. So he's trying to, we're selling arms to everybody. That's one of the reasons why we're selling stuff. And he said he was going to sell long-range weapons to Ukraine, even in his meeting with Zelensky, it seems, because he's got to make up this. He's got to patch this hole. So like all of his, ridiculous "I'm the peace president" blather, which he absolutely does not believe and never did, went right out the window when he saw the price tag that he could get for these other things. But I know, Johnny, you got some questions for Phil. So what do we have first?
Hang on just a second. I was just replying in the chat. First question I've got here is from Connie Kelly. Ask Phil how Ukraine feels about the Hungarian spy drones at the border, even as Hungary prepares to host the NATO Adaptive Hussars exercise.
Generally speaking about Hungary, I mean, the Hungarians have been really I'm trying to find a word that won't fine you with the FCC.
You're right.
The Hungarians are not playing ball, and they make complaints all the time about stuff that Ukraine does because Orban is on Putin's leash. So I'm not anything Hungary says when it comes to relations with Russia, because Hungary is compromised, and Orban in particular. So, yeah, I'm not really shocked by anything that comes out of Hungary. At some point, the EU is going to have to do something about this. But we shall see. And obviously, it's also on a timetable where it depends on where the actual war goes. If Putin falls out a window, Orban will not be far behind. So or Lukashenko won't either. I mean, and that's why, again, on this UNGA speech that Lukashenko brought up, I mean, he talked about all these different countries that have been compromised and who are under threat from Moscow, and urging Europe in particular to wake up to the fact that the Russians are all over the place destabilizing things, whether it's in Moldova or Georgia or Hungary or
whatever,
Slovakia,
Transnistria, right?
Transnistria.
Yeah.
All of these things are tied to the fact that Russia is currently playing a game of hybrid warfare, which isn't just about guns. It's not just about the war on the front line in Ukraine. All these incursions that have happened recently into Polish airspace or Estonian airspace, or ships that are moving into territorial waters. All of this stuff is combined to the fact that Moscow is trying to gain the initiative and intimidate the West and make the West dance to its tune, because it recognizes that it's losing on the one front line that really does matter more than anything, and that's the front line here in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are not going anywhere. They're not giving up. And it's just going to be disastrous for Moscow.
So this was Trump's quote that he put on Truth Social after he met with Zelensky. After getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it is causing in Russia, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win, in all caps, all of Ukraine back in its original form. Ukraine would be able to take back their country in its original form, and who knows, maybe even go further than that. And I think that's probably some relation to Kursk, and like if they wanted to, they could take Moscow, because at this point is his argument. Now, whether he's doing that just to get Putin to the negotiating table is part of the argument, but I think in reality, that opening sentence is the most embarrassing and annoying of the whole thing, which is after getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation. Like he hasn't been paying attention this entire time, and he's just been going off of what he's hearing from, Tucker Carlson and Scott Ritter and all the other Epstein adjacent people in his orbit, like Bannon and others, about Ukraine. or what he had lied to himself about Ukraine in his attempt to get at Joe Biden. And after the Hunter thing is that they became, a casualty of his attempt to go after, to go after Hunter Biden and therefore Joe. That's wearing off because reality is catching up with it. But getting to know, and I think that was the point, economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it is causing in Russia, so he used economic twice in like 8 words.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I find troubling about that, and I'm not the only one, is that like now you have a full understanding of the
now
conflict
a warning,
between Russia
right?
and Ukraine. Now you understand.
Does he though?
What happens in a month from now,
right?
When you get other information from some other source, are you going to say again in a month's time, oh no,
yeah,
now I really get it, and now I'm on Moscow's side? I mean, it's
I think the problem he has with that,
the United States, dude.
Right? Well, it's I think he's moving like a cruise ship at this point, and what's real, the problem that he's having is that he's finally reaching this point. Now, he might try to walk it back if Moscow plays nice and sets up a nicer meeting with Kellogg or does something, but I don't think they have the capacity to do that. I don't think they can afford to do that on their own, and they certainly don't have anything they want to give or are willing to give, right? In exchange for a ceasefire or any of this stuff to actually bring it to a close. They don't have anything to offer. So that's really the issue, is that you've got he's coming to this conclusion, and there's no way to put this toothpaste back in the tube. There's no way to, like, in a month that Russia's economy is going to turn around. They're not going to have a big success, in this big like mud and slush rainstorm. Operation Trenchfoot isn't going to, result in like them having some sort of big beat your chest kind of a win where they can put on a parade and Trump can be invited to sit there on the dais next to Putin and enjoy the view, right? That's not going to happen. So walking this back, while yes, it's a concern that his brain is tapioca and anything can happen, there is a reality quotient that it seems like he is finally outrunning his ability to BS himself.
Yeah,
in theory.
Yeah, and it's the reality, and their big push out east, and we've talked about this before as well. If they can get past the east in Donbass, there's a lot of open ground where they might be able to make significant gains all the way to the river. But just for the audience that has not heard this before, I'll restate it. Russia's strategic goals in this war are to change the government in Kiev to one that is more subservient and favorable to Moscow. Secondly, they need to take Odessa because Odessa is strategically important for control of the northern shore of the Black Sea. Neither of those two things are reasonably achievable for Moscow. They could get to a point where they could stop and have a false ceasefire and a pause, and then they rearm and they come back. But it's just simply not possible for them to take Kiev or Odessa. And without those two things, they don't win this war. And that has been, for those of us who have studied this region for a long time, understand that has not been possible for a very, very long time. So even if they do take Donbass, they won't be able to get those strategic gains. But what we are seeing currently is that they aren't even able to take Donbass because they have had losses in Pokrovsk. They have had all of these salients and these bulges and places where they've overextended themselves.
Yeah.
And they're getting their handed to themselves.
Well, we need to take a break, but I would like to point out that yesterday, the former chairman of the Committee for the Development of Transport Infrastructure of St. Petersburg, this guy Alexander Fedorov, who was working at the Sheremetyevo airport, fell out a window because he got upset yesterday. The transport minister, Roman Starov, did himself in with a gun earlier that day. And today, the director of the Krasnodar territory, a local deputy from United Russia, decided to use rope to do himself in. This is all about these departments in these areas and the news they have to report back up the line being bad, and that the graft is not there anymore. So it's a lot. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. The dude who hung himself had his hands tied behind his back. The guy, what's his name? Vili Kapustin. Yeah. He was the director of Kubanevstroy LLC, which was he's the chairman of the Commission on Agriculture and Land Management, Utilities, Transport, and Communications and Landscaping. He hung himself, and his hands were tied behind his back. And they're having so many, the money for infrastructure isn't there to be had. You could tell that this is just a lot of it's like when Hitler was getting bad news and they would shoot the messenger. It's exactly like that. It's gnarly.
Stand by, coming back.
The wheels on the bus are just coming off.
Oh man, yeah.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! Welcome. I mean, we have, I think this about face and this recognition that Russia cannot win this war, and that that has to be taken as a major win. Again, with cautious optimism, certainly at the very least. This idea that maybe just the truth is starting to seep through this giant wall of ignorance that Trump has actively built around himself, from Hegseth to Vance to Tucker Carlson and the right-wing machine, to the Benny Johnsons of the world who were, taking money from Tenet Media, selling for 2 years straight on the take. Tim Pool, all these groups selling that Russia is going to win, has to win. Ukraine has no chance. I mean, remember that video we saw of Tim Pool where he was viciously, after he had been found out to be getting this Tenet Media, viciously attacking the idea that Ukraine could win just to give himself a defense, like he really believed it, so that he wouldn't be found out for the shill he was. And it's not true. It wasn't true then. It's not true now. And now that is finally, after, that was garbage a year and a half ago, is starting to seemingly, maybe possibly break through to Trump one way or another. Again, with a cautious optimism, caveats all over the place. Trump's brain is tapioca. It may be he got to a big fight with Melania afterwards, so maybe she was yanking his leash back in line, as his official former Soviet handler class, agent or whatever.
War is tricky. War is a fickle mistress, and things can change. And I have always said that, I believed Ukraine would be successful in this war, and I still believe it 100%. But, never say never. And again, wars are really, by their very nature, chaotic things. But I think and I also think, look, I today was out having lunch trying to get the kind of last sunny days of fall and autumn, and I was sat at an outdoor cafe having lunch, And sadly, something that happens pretty regularly was a funeral procession came down the main street in Kiev. And people came out, stopped whatever they were doing, and stood in, bowed their heads, or had they been the entire patio at the cafe, stood up from their table. And I mention this because the solidarity is still here. The strength of Ukraine is still here, and they're not going to surrender. They're not. There is no scenario. The one thing I can say, without the kind of instability and chaos of war, the one thing that I will say with absolute, if not complete, but near absolute confidence is Ukraine's not going to stop fighting. They're not going to stop fighting. And the cost that Russia will have to pay, and Moscow's already at its increasing crisis point, and they haven't even started the occupation phase of a war in Ukraine.
Yeah, they could not ever manage it to start with. They definitely couldn't do now. Right. Let me real quick, because I want to make sure we get another question. But there was this interview with Zelensky on Bret Baier's show, and he said to Bret Baier, he has relations with Putin. I think he meant relationships, but maybe that's what the P tape is after all. He has relations with Putin. And before my dialogue with him, he had these relations. That's why he trusted that when Putin shared with him the situation in Ukraine, these fairy tales that they will occupy totally our Donbass region. One by one, he understood that Putin was just sharing some information that is far away from of real situation on the battlefield, far away from the truth. And then goes to your point about Keith Kellogg being over there. His special envoy revealed what he had recently advised the president, that Russia was losing the war. He says, if Putin thinks Russia is winning, his definition of winning and my definition of winning are absolutely two different things, Kellogg told the Yalta European Security Conference in Kyiv. If he was winning, he'd be in Kyiv. If he was winning, he'd be west of the Dnipro. If he was winning, he'd be in Odessa. If he was winning, he would have changed the government by now, is the argument. And so that was the report. That's what Keith Kellogg, and that's what I would say Dan Kane is also sharing with Trump, is this reality. And it's starting to sink in, as thick as he is. And I feel like he's looking at this way of like, if you're going to end this war, the only way it's going to be won is if Russia loses and doesn't start another one.
Yeah. And it's despite how desperately so many people wanted to see Russia as this force of nature, this unstoppable, this idea that, like, well, of course Russia's going to win. I mean, it's Russia. It's this massive power that I think, and I mean, look, even when Trump says it's a paper tiger, that to get to that point has been a very long journey, to disassemble the myth of Russia's invincibility and its power and capability, to get to a point where it's like, actually, you guys really don't have a chance of winning in Ukraine. And if you can't win in Ukraine, no matter how much airspace you violate or naval maneuvers you do, we're not scared of you anymore.
Right.
And the Russians are going to keep doing that, by the way. The Russians are going to keep trying to scare the West, particularly the Europeans, because they want the Europeans to spend money on arms as opposed to social programs and all the other things that Europeans enjoy. But they can do that as much as they like. It's not going to change the fact that they're going to lose this war. They can't fight the Ukrainians. How are they going to fight,
Europeans? Right. Well, and that's that using mutual assured destruction as an envelope, where we'll have to nuke you guys. It'll be our only chance if we're getting our butt kicked by Ukraine. Imagine, we won't have any other recourse but to use the most violent means necessary. Right. And that's what everybody's worried about, because that's their fallback. The problem is, again, these are not true believers. These are not the old Soviet people, or some, disillusioned spies like us character going, you'll destroy the earth to preserve the American way of life. I would be willing to do it. Like, it's not that kind of person. These are just like, yacht and gold hoarding hedonists, and they don't want to die for Mother Russia. It doesn't work that way. They want to survive and have their goods. So it's a bluff. It really is a bluff. And until somebody calls it, the killing will go on. And Zelensky told Trump that he believes that Russia will not wait. Putin will not wait till this war is over to start another fight someplace else. And that's what the testing of drones into other airspaces is. It's also where he could attack one of his own former satellites in a way to draw attention down there, or start unrest in countries where Trump had settled these wars, because Russia is behind all the arms in the Rwanda conflict are all Russian. They're all AK-47s floating around down there. And that's a big part of their, their war farting right now. They're just throwing stuff around everywhere they can. We're out of this, Joe, but I want to remind everybody, out of time rather. We're On the Edge is Phil's show. New episode tomorrow.
This week we talk in depth about Ukraine's drone inventiveness, and it's a good conversation. So
Excellent.
8 p.m. Kiev time, wherever that is around the world.
Yes, and Johnny Million, it's Johnny Million live stream. Check it out on YouTube and Twitch and infotainmentwars.com. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, patreon.com/HalSparks. Thank you, Chicago. See you next time.
See you, Chicago. Thank you, everyone.
Made it. Good. Yes, rip war ravaged Portland. Rip Portland. It's no longer there. So, CSL put the link in. Thanks, CSL, in the chat for Phil's channel, so you guys can grab that and subscribe. And wait, yeah, and who said that? Wait, hold on. There was one right here. Here you go. Whiffle poof. Throw this in here real quick. Phil's show is so good. There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
it's a good episode this week. Really good. And if you haven't seen the last two, they're good as well. So, keep trying to put out quality. Try and explain things.
Connie says Russian interests hold a lot of Trump's debt. If they lose, the debt might go away. That's part of his thing too. Also, the crypto wins that he's had have erased a lot of he's been able to pay off a lot of the secondary debt with that stuff, making money that way, and that's given him an out where he's not under the thumb of these folks anymore. It's like other graft has protected his primary, has protected him from the loan sharks. Effectively, they can't break his knees anymore, so he's not necessarily afraid of them because he's paid them off. They're paid in full. So that's the thought.
Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that he obviously he was compromised by Putin before, but he may have gotten to a place where he is broken loose of his chains.
He's out from under it, and he's looking to the other side of it, like what his legacy and what his foundational wealth will be about after that, and for the family and for Ivanka and all that stuff. That's where he's focused at. I think the Nobel Peace Prize thing is just a rehab for his name, so that he doesn't end up, like a pariah where his properties get burned down. Which is, again, if they're not in an authoritarian country, they're going to happen. All right, I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much, both of you.
All right. Talk to you
beautiful
on
bastards.
Wednesday.
Yes, I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Awesome. There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, take care, Jen. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right, I'm off.
And then, okay, cheers. There we go. And why is my digital zoom here? There you go. Move this over here. Excellent. And then see if my little chat window works on this one. Just for you guys. Boink. There you are. All right. Shrunk down. There you go. Hi, everybody. You guys are fantastic. Pervert Hoover. Right. He wants to be in some annals. Right. In his own mispronunciation. King told Trump what's needed for Nobel Prize supporting Ukraine. You may be right that may be like, if you could end this by, fighting off Russia and bringing Vladimir Putin, up on war crimes, that's a little closer. Pat, thank you, Hal. Good Flapper show last night. So good. I was watching it this AM because that's why I was late. Oh, that's awesome. Most watched movie for you, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or it could be Wizard of Oz, just because I'm all. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has some great stuff in it. I love that movie. I happen to think it's DiCaprio's best work so far. Just saying. Wait, is somebody coughing around in the background? Who is that? What's going on? Oh, it's Phil. Okay. I don't know, like more audio playing in the background. I need to change the text on this. Text color should be on this one should be white, I think. Just here. There you go. And it should be okay. And then here we go. Okay, save. Let's very big. Let's stretch this out. Go. I got to figure out how to wrap this thing so that it actually fits on the screen. It's style text box shrink. No. Let's see. Try this one. Text box truncate. Nope, that's not it either. Okay, take this. Let's go back to dynamic. And let's go back to edit text or whatever. How do we save? I guess it would be like scroll this in. Good Lord. What in the heavens to Murgatroyd is happening here? Yeah, there you go. Move this over here. That's better. Make it a box. Yeah. Now I can see it all. Thank God. It's so weird that the text on this thing is so odd. I love doing little like housekeeping with you guys on the air. It makes me feel less lonely while I'm fixing elements of the show, which I normally do by myself. There you go. Thank you, Andrea. Metalhead, thank you so much. That was so much fun. We can all get off this crazy train one day. Well, everybody does. It's always fun on the greatest live stream of all time. I insist. No Country for Old Men is great. It's a lot though. It's not one of those things I can just put on and kind of absorbs in like it requires attention, as do most Coen Brothers films, right? Now you must be exhausted. No, I'm not exhausted. I'm a little tired. It's always, like doing a Friday late night show before radio the next day, especially because it's like almost two different mindsets intentionally. Yes, exactly. It's SD Sullivan. I agree, William. Yeah, beautiful beaches in Canada. I understand, but it's nice. Yes, don't forget, be best. Whoops, sorry. It's peace all. Thank you. Can you fix your main account issues? Rocks rolls on. I don't know. It depends on what your main account is and whether it deserves to be fixed. God damn it. Use AI. It won't do it yet. I don't, there's a lot of stuff. I take that back, Chris. It may do some of the things, but I'm not comfortable handing it over to having it deal with the things. Like I built a chatbot a while back that's like, technically trained on my stand-up and has my voice or whatever that I could put on my website and it could answer questions. But the terrifying aspect of what it could come up with, without just limits on the language it uses, the things it could say, I just can't. I wouldn't feel safe releasing it into the wild at all. Maybe it would be fine, but no. Tried to get your attention last night. Oh, you can't, Kelly, because I don't get to see the chat. It's in the sound booth. Although, hey, Boston Brian, you too. Have a great show tomorrow. Everybody check out Boston Brian's show. Subscribe to his channel as well, because he is a brother and is good people. My birthday dinner was lovely. It was very nice. We went to Joe Stone Crab, and there's a guy who, the maitre d' there is this guy, Thomas, who works on the regular. And I've only had two situations in my life where I've eaten at a place enough where the people who work there specifically go, your table, sir? In some ways, where they're that friendly. This guy, Thomas, is really sharp and he's very funny. And he's he's properly a dick to me. And we're back and forth. They're like little jabs, but he's such a sweetheart. And he wasn't there the last time we ate there, and I was worried because I hadn't seen him. And then he was back, and we were like, Summer and I were both so happy to see him. It was lovely. So that was nice. I'm still trying to figure out why people have Mulholland Drive ranked so highly. It was okay. Oh, well, you know, again, I'm going live in 5. Excellent, Trucker John. Everybody go check out Trucker John's show. He's on in 5 minutes. I throw it your way, but I don't have my normal setup. Hal, please put up a full Nerd Halen show. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna I figured out a way to because my channel's monetized, but I found out a way to not monetize the music videos so that I don't get a strike. So I post them, in the way that I post them separately, just making sure that I just have to de-click monetize them because everything's automatically done that way because this is a business. But if I take that off, then I don't get a copyright strike. And that was always the big worry, that if I overlay those. So now I get to do that, and it should be fine, in theory. All right, I'm going to go and get some rest, and I'm going to go have coffee or lunch with Doug Pinnock. And I love you guys, and you're awesome. And I have some of my theme songs in here. This one, yeah, that'll do. And I'll see you guys on Monday. Yeah, there it is.